Hey, welcome to my hometown. Thank you so much for being here. PCI, good morning. Wow, fantastic to see you all here this morning. Do me a favor. Let's start this off with something real simple. You ready? I want you to grab your smartphone. Does anyone not have a smartphone? Anybody in the room not have a smartphone on them? Of course not. How could you leave without your oxygen mask, right? Right, grab that smartphone. Answer this question honestly. Ready? Complete honesty. How many of you, before even getting out of bed this morning, checked this device for email, text messages, social media posts, before even getting out of bed? Raise them and raise them high. That crazily, every single hand almost is going up. How many of you actually sleep with the phone in the same bed on the pillow next to you? Come on, fess up. Yeah, there's like 6 single people in the room. Or if you're not, you will be soon, trust me on this. When did that happen? When did you begin to sleep with your mobile device? What I want to do this morning is elevate the conversation a bit. So much of what you've heard and what you've talked about is fascinating. And I think at the end of the day, you're the ones doing the heavy lifting, right? That are keeping us safe. But there's an element to keeping us safe that goes well beyond the technology. So we'll talk about tech, we'll talk about AI, but I also want to focus on that one thing that is the most elusive of all to truly understand and to project, and that is behavior. This is a behavioral shift. This is not just the technology. Today, I can't live without this device, as most of you can't. We can't leave our home, our hotel room without it. That's a behavioral shift. And behavior, ultimately, is where the risk lies. Understanding behavior and how technology is going to shift and catalyze new behaviors, I think, is truly the most magnificent part of what we can talk about when it comes to how we secure our future. So, you ready to have that conversation? We got about 4 hours ahead of us, I think. Was it 4 hours? I think 3.5, 4 hours. We could do the 4 hours, trust me, and you'll figure that out quickly in just a few minutes. All right, so where do we begin that ambitious of a conversation? It's September 12th. Yesterday was the day that all of us remember, and I'm sure that everyone remembers exactly where they were on 9/11 in 2001. A few days after 9/11, I remember having a conversation with Peter Drucker, one of my mentors that I had the enormous privilege to get to know during the course of my life. Worked with Drucker for over 10 years. And I asked Peter, I said, because we were all so disoriented at the time. Do you remember what that felt like? This tremendous feeling of being disconnected from reality, trying to understand what the playbook was like. I was talking to Ken, who's a private pilot. I'm a private pilot from years back. We were having a conversation just a few minutes ago. Any private pilots in the room? How many of you are private pilots? A few? When I saw that first gaping hole in the World Trade Center, it wasn't in my playbook that a commercial airliner could possibly have flown into a skyscraper. I thought it was a small Cessna. Some, private pilot didn't know what he or she was doing, flew into the World Trade Center. Horrible, terrible, but not anywhere near what had actually happened. It wasn't in my playbook. So we were all so vastly disturbed by the change that occurred that caused us to look at the world in such a different way. And I asked Drucker, I said, where are we? Where do you think we are? He said something so prescient, and I think it cuts to the core of what you do and who you are and how you will shape the future of security. And fundamentally what he said was, Tom, we are at the beginning of a prolonged period of uncertainty. That's where we are. What if I were to tell you, and this is not going to sit well with many of you, so I apologize in advance, that right now, these are the good times when it comes to security. These are the good times. Yeah, I can feel the tension ripple through the room right now, right? How can I say that? You're so challenged. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much that you have to deal with and contend with. There's so many scenarios that are yet to be developed and understood. Think about your own personal life. Let's make this personal for just a minute. When has your greatest growth occurred? Is it when the rainbows are out and the butterflies are flying about? No. Growth occurs when we're in moments of crisis. We are in moments of crisis right now. We are at the precipice of one of the most extraordinary shifts in humanity because of AI in large part, but because of the contextual uncertainty of the world around us. Any direction you look in right now, you will see that uncertainty. So the question I have for you and the challenge I have for you, and this is your compass setting, I believe. How do we mitigate that uncertainty? How do we create greater certainty in the world going forward? Because certainty gives us the ability to predict, it gives us the ability to have emotional bandwidth, and certainty is the one thing that allows us to progress as a society. But uncertainty is the catalyst that leads us to that. So how will you as a community create greater certainty in the future? What this looks like, by the way, is fascinating. I've been talking about this now for decades, this notion of an uncertainty principle. Over time, uncertainty increases, but opportunity also increases. Risk increases, but the duration of each opportunity and the increase in risk are opposing forces. So what you have is a shorter time to action over time. You have less time to respond to the uncertainty. Yet the opportunity doesn't go away. The opportunity is still there. It just lasts for shorter and shorter periods of time. This is so relevant when we talk about the real-time nature of threat assessment. Being able to identify a threat and being able to immediately act upon that threat in real time exceeds now the ability of human beings. In many cases, AI is coming along at a time when we most desperately need it. As a civilization, I'll put it out there, and I'm sure many of you have thought about this, I don't believe we'll be able to survive without AI. It will become our most essential collaborator in everything we do, and it will become actually the core collaborator in what you do. So we're going to explore a lot over the course of the next hour or so. I'm going to dive into some interesting tangents around what does it mean to be a more certain, more secure society, and hopefully give you some food for thought in terms of how you can deploy this and do the heavy lifting at the end of the day that's going to cause us to live in that more secure world. Ready for it? Yeah? Kinda? Sort of? Maybe? Yeah? I got one person clapping. Yay, thank you. Okay. All right, let's roll up our sleeves. Can I get comfortable with you? Can I take off the jacket too? I'm just kind of feeling it right now. Is that okay? Yeah, it'll stop there. Don't worry. We're not going any further. That's just the jacket. Just the jacket. All right, let's roll up the sleeves too. Okay, let's have some fun. I want to go back to 1960. How many of you were around in 1960? Show of hands. Oh shit, am I the oldest person in the room? Really? The hell did that happen? Okay, we got a few. Okay, thank you. I got a few of my homies in the room that were around in 1960. Thank you very much. Let's go back to 1960. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to tell me if you know what these images are of. And I want you to tell me by name. So I know this is a computer. What computer is it? Someone in the room knows this, I know for sure. Someone say ENIAC? It's the ENIAC, yes. Very well. One of my homies right there. Yeah, it is the ENIAC. Absolutely. By the way, I can kind of put me on the spot here. I don't have any toys, but I've had one toy that I happen to have in my pocket that I'll show you in a minute. What did the ENIAC run on? It was not transistors. What was it? Vacuum tubes. Absolutely. There it is. I just happen to have a vacuum tube in my pocket. Doesn't everyone? No? Why do you have a vacuum tube, Tom? I'll answer the question. My dad was a big-time computer engineer. He used to bring home all kinds of computer components and equipment. It was a fascinating kind of experience for me to see all this stuff. But Dad's idea of father-son time was not shooting hoops or going out in the backyard to play catch with a baseball or throwing a baseball. Dad's idea of father-son time was going to Radio Shack to test the vacuum tubes on the vacuum tube tester. It was a shitty childhood, let me tell you. Dad thought this would be a life skill. Tom, you will forever be grateful that you can now test a vacuum tube on a vacuum tube tester. It has served me well, let me tell you. 18,000 of these in the ENIAC. Now, the ENIAC was actually circa 1945. It was a bit before this time period, but just to use round numbers, let's say this is where we are in 1950, 1960, thereabouts. What's this device, however? Someone said a disk drive. Yes, it is the IBM 350. It is a portable disk drive, by the way, as evidenced by the photograph, right? You get that. What was the storage capacity of the IBM 350? It was 5 meg, but 3 meg usable. Yeah. Very astute audience. You're taking me to task. I love it. Put yourself, why am I doing this to you? The 60 years of progress that we have seen will be absolutely eclipsed in the next 5 years. But I want to show you how fast that progress has been and exactly what it looks like, because we often forget where we've been and how far we've come. And as a result, we discount dramatically how far we can go. So if I'm going to show you the trajectory of the future, I have to first show you the trajectory of the past. So in 60 years, from 1960, again using round numbers here, to the present day, what's happened to the number of user computing devices, these things, all the things that Ken just showed you? We have gone from about 1,000 user computing devices in 1960, being quite generous, to well over 12 billion of these user computing devices today. And of those, about 7 billion are these things, right? Our oxygen mask, our mobile devices. This trajectory could be understood by a 5-year-old, because decade over decade, I'm a 5-year-old, explain to me what's happening. Decade over decade, what's happening to the number of user computing devices? I'm the 5-year-old, explain it to me. Anyone? Real simple. It's going up by what? Exponentially, but more specifically, I'm a 5-year-old. I don't know what exponential means. Add a 0, 10 times. Bingo. Add a 0 to it. Each decade, 1 order of magnitude increase in the number of user computing devices. So given that, smart group, right? Do the math. How many user computing devices will we have by the year 2100? You want to talk about, the threat landscape and the surface area that's potentially going to be attacked. What will the size of that threat landscape be? How many user computing devices will we have by 2100 given this math? Someone said a boatload. It's not a quintillion. No, it's more than a quintillion. We will have 100 times as many user computing devices as there are grains of sand on all the world's beaches. Stop and take a deep breath, because right now, a few of you want to come up here and just slap me. It's not possible. Come on, Tom. Get real, please. Give us something practical we can work with. I have so much more stature and greater credibility today making that projection than I ever would have in 1960 saying that we'll have 12 billion ENIACs by 2024. Because that's what we have. And this is not an ENIAC. This is hundreds of thousands of ENIACs. That IBM 350, I can hold well over 300,000 of those between my fingertips today. Stop and consider the progress that's been made by doing that. The question is not, will the technology be there? I have no doubt the technology will be there. We'll be ingesting these. They'll be in our pharmaceuticals. Every piece of produce you buy in the supermarket will have an embedded device of some sort in it. It's not, will the technology be there? We can project technology. What can't we project? 2 things, the behavior and the value. We don't know what the value is yet. 20 years ago, if I told you you'd be sleeping with this device, you'd have thought me patently absurd. And yet today you are, or close to you on your nightstand, right? Those behavioral shifts are the most difficult things to understand, and they are the shifts that expose us most. I've been teaching a course at BU now for several years. I think I took a few years off, a couple semesters off these last few years, on cybersecurity leadership. And one of the things, when I began teaching that course almost a decade ago, was that there was this unwritten, call it a standard amongst hangers, ethical standard, if you will, that hospitals would not be attacked. What the hell ever happened to that, right? Huge behavioral shift, and now my machine is demonstrating behaviors as well, which is quite interesting. Let's see if we can figure that out. Hold on. There we go. It is the behavioral shift that I'm most fascinated by and that I most want to draw your attention to, because these are the things that ultimately shape the future more than anything else. When you add to the number of user computing devices, the power of computing, this is pre-quantum. This is classical computing power I'm about to talk about now. Quantum totally blows the lid off of this, as you well know. Lake Michigan, coincidentally, just happens to have as many ounces of water as the human brain does neurons. Fantastic little piece of trivia there. If we look at the ability of the human mind to perform calculations based on its neural complexity, and we fill Lake Michigan at the same rate that computing is increased in its power to perform calculations, something fascinating happens. When I say we're on the precipice, We truly are. We're standing right on the edge of that precipice right now. Let me show you how close to that edge we are. If you begin to fill Lake Michigan, one drop at a time, based on one drop being one calculation per second, and follow the trajectory of how computing power has increased, by 2025, this is next year, by the way, by 2025, you have a computer as powerful from a resource standpoint as the human brain. We are at a point where we are creating a new species with AI. And the question in my mind, which often get asked, we often ask this question, is AI sentient? Is it conscious? Doesn't matter. It'll convince us it is. Whether it is or not is not a question that I'm concerned with. It will convince us, it will fool us that it is sentient and conscious. The more important question, to my mind, is what does consciousness mean to us as human beings? How do we then create value in this new world? When AI takes away all the entry-level positions, when AI does all the coding, when AI does all the threat analysis, what does that leave us with? It's a difficult thing to comprehend, isn't it? Because until we've experienced that new reality, we really don't know what it's like. So I want to give you a bit of a glimpse into what that reality looks like. But it's difficult. It is so incredibly difficult to predict the future because it's not just about predicting technology. Want a proof point? Watch this commercial. This is a series of ads run by AT&T. I'm not going to tell you what year. I want you to guess the year.
Borrowed a book?
But in this series of ads, you will see ebooks. You will see GPS in prescient detail, because this is exactly the way our lives look right now. This is how we live today. Tablet-based computing, which they called in the ad, sending a fax from the beach. I love that, right? Using the language of the past to describe the future. We're so hindered by just vocabulary sometimes. Electronic medical records is what you're seeing here. In a minute, you're going to see WebEx, and now you'll see Netflix. In what year did AT&T so incredibly predict with such precise prescience the future? What year was it? Take a guess. Yell it out. What year do you think this was? 85, someone says. I heard 70, someone said. A lot of 80s, yeah. 1993. Was not that long ago. And yet we thought this was like the George Jetson future, right? Like maybe our kids will live this way or their kids will live this way. And when you talk to the folks who were at AT&T just after Bell Labs had been disbanded and they were trying to regain the glory of Bell Labs, when you talk to those folks, what they'll tell you is, yeah, we knew the technology would be there. What we didn't get was how pervasive it would be, how essential it would be, how people would not be able to live without it. That we didn't get. My point here is that we are going to see an acceleration in not just technological shifts, but in behavioral shifts that quite literally is going to shake our world to its core. So we're like, what, 10 minutes into this? Can I just show you the future and we'll be done with it? We can go like right to Q&A after that, or maybe just go have drinks. Are you ready? You good? Okay, we're going to break out the Sam Adams after this one because we're done. This is what the future looks like. Here it is. It's my son Adam. Yeah, talk about screen time. What about like real world time? Because in Adam's world, screen time was all the time there was. Can I ask you a question? As a parent, lots of parents in here, what is the right number of hours your child should spend in front of a screen? What's the number? Like 23? 23 and a half maybe? Adam was incessant about this. And we would have these all-out battles, these brawls. What you're seeing now is NORAD. I want to give you a frame of reference. Now you're seeing Adam. Do you see a difference? Feet up. Yeah, that's about the only difference. Yeah, barefoot with feet up is about the only difference. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. We would have these all-out brawls over, get the heck away from the screen. Go outside, experience life. And this behavioral shift was incredibly, not beyond annoying, it was disturbing to me. I thought I was raising a child that would lack social skills, that would be unable to communicate with the world. It wasn't just Adam. My daughter, Mia, was even worse at this. When she had her first boyfriend, they would be on FaceTime literally endlessly, 24 hours a day. I mean, Ryan, her boyfriend, wonderful guy, loved him, adored him, still do to this day. Ryan literally moved in with us. He lived on Mia's bed on her laptop in FaceTime. Right? I would walk by Mia's room. Hi, Mia. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Mr. K. At night, I'd walk by and Ryan would be snoring. It's like, what the hell? They were online 24/7. I can recall quite vividly, beautiful day, Adam was on summer break. He was in the attic. He was gaming for maybe 18 hours straight, and I had it. I was done. This was crossing the line. So I went upstairs and I said, Adam, get the hell outside. The sun is shining. Get some vitamin D. Chase a freaking squirrel. I don't care. Just go outside and do something. Adam looks at me and says, Dad, but my friends are here. What did you do? Dad, what did you do when, before there were computers? What did you do? It's like before there were computers, just after the Stone Age, in other words. I said, I'll tell you what I used to do. I used to get on my Schwinn Stingray with the yellow banana seat. Remember those? Bike. I'd go to the dead-end street. We lived in a dead-end street by a little swamp land there. And I would fend for myself. We'd build bows and arrows. My life, Adam, was like one perpetual series of Survivor. I was just out there communing with nature, chewing on bark. Adam looks at me. This is God's honest conversation. Adam looks at me, I'll never forget this, and says, what exactly is a dead-end street? He says, kind of like a cul-de-sac, you little What's your point? He says, well, my point, Dad, is that this, point to a screen, this is my cul-de-sac. This is where my friends live. Outside are squirrels. Here, there's friends. What do you say? As a parent, what do you say to that? No, really, what do you say as a parent? What do you say to that? I said, get the hell outside, get some vitamin D, and stop making sense. Adam was being hypersocial. Adam has this tolerance that I wish I had grown up with. He doesn't care what race you are. The color of your skin is irrelevant. Your gender affiliation, he doesn't care. And none of that matters. All he cares about is, can you play the game? If you can play the game, you're on my team. I'm good. That's a good thing, isn't it? We make everything zero-sum, is my point. We say that by going digital, we increase threat. Come on. By going digital, we increase value to us as human beings. This gives me safety, right? I trust in this device, and that trust enhances my quality of life. The point, this is a conversation I had many, many years ago with Steve Wozniak, of all people, the co-founder of Apple, and we were talking about the risk of technology. We were talking about cyber threats specifically. And those of you that follow Woz knows that he's had a narrative on this for quite some time. And something came up in the conversation which has impressed me ever since. It is that every single technology is both threat and benefit. Every single technology. When we split the atom, we created nuclear weapons, the greatest threat mankind has ever created or ever known. And yet we also created nuclear medicine, nuclear energy, which has saved countless lives. Our job, your job, more specifically, is to tilt the arc ever so slightly towards the positive. Not dramatically, but slightly towards the positive. If we do that, then we make progress, we move forward. We mitigate threat. We don't eliminate it, because to eliminate threat is to eliminate progress. To eliminate mutation in the genome is to eliminate evolution. We want to grow, we want to evolve, we want to innovate. And that means we have to accept threat. But we want to mitigate that threat. What Adam illustrates to me is that there are new ways of behavior that are not zero-sum, as much as I distaste for the way that Adam lives his life online. There's an element to this which truly is to be celebrated. What is this little girl doing while we're on the topic of behavior? What is she doing? Exactly. She's trying to interact with the device. To her, the magazine is a defective iPad, basically, right? And the brilliant child, see the little finger being pushed into the pudgy thigh? The deduction being, brilliant. My finger is definitely working. It is the magazine that's broken. Now, not all of us will go into the future willingly. We'll get dragged into it. For those of you that are a little younger than I am, it's called whiteout. The future drags us into it. It drags us into it because it always gives us what we don't expect. And yet, in so many cases, what we most then can't live without. So my challenge to you as we get into this, we talk about some of these gigatrends and how they're going to shape the future, is that our role is not to eliminate risk. If anything, risk is a necessary part of moving forward. Risk in how we change our behaviors and how we change our attitudes and how we deploy our technologies. The challenge is to move that needle ever so slightly towards the positive. That's the challenge, and to continue doing that as we move forward into an ever more complex, ever more uncertain world. So let's talk about some of the gigatrends. This one, I think, is fascinating because one of the things that is simply not going to change no matter what we do from a policy standpoint, it just doesn't matter, is the demographic shift of the world. Stop and think about what this means to both your industry and to every industry across the globe, whether it's healthcare, education, agriculture, it doesn't matter. What I'm about to show you is a time lapse of the population pyramid of the world from 1950 to 2100. Each of these is a 5-year age band. Pay close attention here because this is a bit mind-blowing and a bit terrifying as well, quite frankly. So what you see is that original population pyramid from 1950 silhouetted, and as we move into the late 1900s and the early 2000s, you see more of a dome shape occurring. Notice what's happening to those lower bands. The lower bands now are fairly equal as we move up the pyramid. Not much difference in the population size in each of those bands. And by the time we get to 2050 or so, there's less than 2 percentage points delta difference between the 0 through 5 age band and the 60 through 65 age band. Answer me a question: how in the world do we use the industrial era models that we created to build the future and to secure it, to build and secure this future? And I think the answer is we cannot. This is an entirely different world that we will be living in. 5, 6, 7 generations working shoulder to shoulder. Is anyone in this room, be honest, anyone ever going to fully retire to the point where you don't add any value, no knowledge, no experience back to the world, and you extract no value from it? Completely, totally retire. Who's going to do that? How many of you? Is there one hand I can see that I can aspire to be you? None of us. No one's raising their hand. One hand. Thank you. Meet me afterwards and tell me how you're going to do it. I want to be there with you. I can't figure it out. Because, look, I won't be so arrogant as to say that I've got any wisdom, but I've got some experience. I'd love to share it with people. I'd love to mentor. I'd love to consult, to keep writing my books, to sharing my ideas. Don't we all? The other piece of this is you cannot fund the social institutions that we funded with this pyramid shape, with this dome shape. It's just not possible. 2 geos that will defy this. Real quick, I won't get into the politics of this, but you can imagine on your own. China will be in a world of hurt. They'll be at half their population by 2100 as they are today. Africa will be in a world of envy because they will have a perfect population pyramid up through 2100, which is why China is investing so heavily in Africa. You can make your own determinations there, but it's fascinating to think about that and how that's going to evolve over time. These are immutable trends that are going to shape the world while technology and AI continue to move forward. The enemy, if I can get into some of the details, the weeds of this conversation, the enemy ultimately in all of this is how do we eliminate the friction required to live our lives? Not just to be consumers, but generally speaking, to live our lives. Friction is the enemy. Friction is the nemesis. But the more we remove friction from a process, the faster that process moves. And the faster that process moves, the harder it is for us to infer what the threats are in that process. And the ultimate goal of this piece of the conversation is that we can't do it alone. I mean, AI becomes absolutely essential as a collaborator in doing this. So about 30 years ago, at Delphi Group, we developed this thing called the knowledge chain, which looked at how organizations have four basic areas of competency. Internal awareness, how well can I do things, what can I do? External awareness, how do I deploy those capabilities to the marketplace to create value? How do I take what the market thinks of those behaviors, products, services, my external responsiveness to bring it to the market quickly and infer that knowledge, and then take that knowledge internally and become responsive to build the next generation of that product. This same exact framework I've used in security now for a number of years, but it works in opposite. Because in security, you can't first be internally aware and then be externally aware, because you will be oblivious to the threats until they're right there in your lap. We have to flip this around when it comes to security and think about how we begin with threat identification, right? You know this as well as anyone does right now. There is no way that threat identification is possible by human beings looking at screens anymore. It just can't be done, right? AI becomes not just the collaborator, but it becomes the first line of defense in external awareness. So if you flip this value chain around, I wish we had more time to get into this and talk about specifics here, but if you flip this around just conceptually and think about what is ultimately your goal in mitigating threat and protecting your organization and protecting the services that you deliver and that you support, it ultimately is about being able to address each of these four quadrants, but more importantly, to do so without the friction inherent in those horizontal and vertical dividing lines. This is why 9/11 happened. The intelligence was there, but it was not shared. Where we are today from the standpoint of AI's assistance in each of these quadrants is that we're moving forward quite quickly. But what we're not doing is building a comprehensive ecosystem that will allow us to look at the entire threat landscape, the internal resources we have to respond to it, how we respond to it, and then how we take those responses and build those into future threat analysis. This notion of the knowledge chain is an essential component, I think, to understanding how we'll need to work with tools like AI in the future to be able to build a more resilient, more secure, less uncertain future. And all of this is clearly going to be data-driven, right? You know that. What you might not know is the degree to which that data sphere is going to increase and how rapidly it will increase. One of the pieces of Delphi is a venture arm, Acro Vantage Ventures. We've invested in several local companies. One of them is Wasabi Technologies, here, a unicorn here in Boston that deals strictly with data storage. I bring that up because we did some work for them some years ago, pre-pandemic, to forecast the increase of the data sphere. The forecasts we made have consistently been outpaced. And I am astounded by the degree to which we are not just capturing but storing data, and yet not deploying it in the most intelligent way. So what you see here are three wedges: a 30% year-over-year growth rate in data captured and stored, 70% and 100%. The horizontal lines, number of atoms that make up the Earth, the solar system, and the universe. So by 2200, at a conservative growth rate, we end up with more bits of data than there are atoms that make up the Earth. And you're saying, how's that possible? It is possible. I mean, in a coffee cup, nature has figured out how to store more quantum states than there are atoms that make up the Earth. So we'll figure this out technologically. Quantum will help us with this. We'll understand that. But the reality is, what do we do with all this data? How do we create value from it? So here's where the data to value bridge, I think, is going to be created, and where I see it having relevance to so much of what you're doing. Security going forward will primarily be about behavioral data. In Gigatrends, we spent a whole chapter talking about behavioral security and identity, digital identity. My behavior is the best indicator of who I am. Nuanced behavior, mannerisms, how I walk, how I talk, what I do, what I consume, when I buy, how I spend, all of that defines me in a unique way. It is my fingerprint digitally. My behavioral self, my digital self, is that fingerprint. So over time, I move from this notion of brands that I am loyal to brands that are loyal to me. This is a fascinating shift. What do I mean by a loyal brand? A brand that understands you and gets you in a non-invasive, respectful way. I'll give you an example. How many of you currently use Waze or some other GPS on your phone to get around? Right? Just about everyone does, right? We can't find our way out of our driveway without using Waze, let's face it. When you first began using Waze, I will guess, like me, you second-guessed Waze a lot, right? So Waze would say, take a right, and you'd say, no, I know a shortcut. I'm going to take a left. After about a month of doing this, you realize that you are never right, that Waze is always in the right. And if you're like me, today, I will follow Waze through the gates of hell. Take me where you want to go. I am not asking any questions, and I only pray that I don't lose my Wi-Fi connection or my cellular connection, right? Because I have no idea where I am. I am going to follow you because I trust you. That simple element of developing trust and faith in technology is this notion of an intention-driven loyal brand. What you are doing is building a foundation on which that trust will rest. My digital identity, my unknown intentions, my intentions that I haven't yet expressed, which will be attended to by AI, are going to rest on this foundation of trust. Without that, we cannot move forward with any of this technology. And I'm going to show you in a very vivid sense why that's the case. So when you think about what you're doing and how it changes the nature of how we live our lives, how we act as consumers, think about this move from brand loyalty, which was just a marketing gimmick, to a truly loyal brand that understands me intimately and for which I then express loyalty in return. And this is where it gets really interesting. You ready for this? I'm going to shut up for a minute, just 1 minute. I want you to watch what you're about to see, and then we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about it.
So what you're about to see isn't me, it's an AI rendering of me. But it's also educated itself, trained itself on my latest book, Gigatrends. So I can now ask the AI questions, and it will respond as me. So effectively, I can have a conversation with myself, something we all joke about doing, but now I'm going to do it in real life. So here's what it would look like. And I'm going to interview the AI, and it will provide me answers to the questions that I ask it. And you tell me if you can see the difference between who's who. So Tom, tell me in the simplest terms what Gigatrends is about. Try to summarize it in just a sentence or two.
The book is about 6 of the most dramatic changes that will shape the next 80 years. Each trend will impact 1 billion or more people.
Okay, that's pretty good. But what if I were to ask you to describe that as well to, let's say, my 100-year-old grandmother who didn't have any real understanding of technology? How would you explain Gigatrends to her?
Well, you know how you lived through the era from the Wright brothers' first flight to a man on the moon? Now imagine that the next 80 years will be 10 times as dramatic as that was. That's what Gigatrends is all about. What do you think? Could you guess which of those two was me and which was my avatar? Well, maybe this next guy can shed some light on the truth. So here's the thing. Neither of those two people was actually me. This is me. Or is it? Does it actually matter anymore? Is the guy on stage even real? Heck, it's all a simulation anyway.
This is the world we're living in today, right? We built this in literally less than half a day using some fairly widely available tools, HeyGen, 11 Labs, some ChatGPT. None of what you saw was me. I put this up here not to scare the daylights out of you, but to make the point that the most essential ingredient in progress of any civilization is trust in the underpinnings of that civilization. And the underpinnings today are technology. I mean, what you are doing is no less than reinforcing, putting rebar in that foundation. But it's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be a very bumpy ride for the next at least 5 years. And look, I know there's blockchain, there are technologies, there's watermarking, digital watermarking. There's ways that we can, play with this. I get that. But it's going to be a bumpy ride. And we are going to lose trust before we regain it. So part of what I'd like to emphasize is that building that trust and creating some sense of ownership over that trust and my identity is going to be absolutely one of the most essential pieces of my having faith in technology and using it going forward. If you want to create chaos in any community, in any social structure, in any government, in any civilization, all you have to do is get people to question that trust. Once you've done that, the foundation crumbles. There is no greater task than the one that you are performing in building and reinforcing that trust. The future of identity is going to be behavioral. So where does PCI fit into all of this? Imagine that today we have this very disjointed sense of our identities, my professional identity, my healthcare identity, my behavioral identity, my financial identity. All of this stuff is scattered to the four winds. Apple owns some of it, Meta owns some of it, my bank owns some of it, my credit card provider owns some of it, my pharmacy owns some of it. I'm scattered to the four winds. What if we took this model and flipped it up on its side? Hypothetical. I'm not saying this is the solution, but hypothetical. And what if I introduce into this now this notion of a digital self to create an ambient security ecosystem? That digital self is everything that I am. I own it. I have rights to it. Blockchain certainly plays a role here, not in its current manifestation because it's just not damn efficient enough, but it will over time. This is mine and mine alone. And it contains everything that I am, to the point where I bequeath this in my will. It lives in a trust. My kids will own this someday. All right? I mean, that version that you saw of me, that will live on forever. I mean, I'm feeding every one of my books, all of the hundreds of articles I've written for Inc. magazine, everything I've ever talked about, I'm feeding it all to an AI, so that'll exist long after I'm gone. Not that my kids necessarily want that, per se, to be able to talk to Dad, long after he's gone, but I'll be there in some form. All of you will be as well. Every one of you will now exist in perpetuity in a fashion that I can have a conversation with you, and you can share with me your ideas and your opinions based on your experience and your history and your thoughts. And that digital self now becomes the interface, the immutable, impermeable, impregnable interface to the rest of the world. That is what you're going to be protecting and what we're all going to be building. That digital self will be behavioral. It will know me in ways that I don't even know myself. And when I combine those digital selves, I create this enormous ability to understand population, demographic shifts, consumer behaviors, all the things that today are so obtuse that we guess at will now be so clearly and immediately self-evident. Fascinating way to think about the future, right? By the way, this digital self is also going to be my digital advocate. If I'm sick, I go to the ER, I don't have to tell them what's wrong with me. My digital self will be my advocate that will do that for me. Fascinating way to think about the future, right? So much more to protect. The threat landscape that we are protecting today is so small in comparison to what I see going forward. Last piece of the puzzle here, the last thing I want to share with you, that none of this happens without the single most important catalyst, I think, to any sort of change. And Karl Popper, Sir Karl Popper, a famous philosopher of the last century, said this so well. It is our ignorance that ultimately is infinite. It's what we don't know. Has everything that can be invented been invented? Everything? Has it? Does anyone believe that? But yet we behave that way. We behave as though it's all here. I mean, I'm sure ancestors at the foot of the Parthenon that thought the same thing. How could civilization get any better than it is today? And we say the same thing now. How could it get any different, any better? It is our ignorance, ultimately, that we battle and we contend with. So what counterbalances that ignorance? It's not technology. I'm going to show you a clip that I know is familiar to most of you. It is that fateful moment on the Titanic when they're in the crow's nest and they see the iceberg. Remember this? And we could claim that so much was done wrong up until this point. The bulkheads weren't high enough, not enough lifeboats, the low-quality slag in the rivets. Captain Smith was a zealot. He was going far too fast through an ice field at the time. Bring up the volume on this thing, guys. I want them to hear what's going on. The fate of the Titanic was sealed in an instant. Everything else that led up to this moment was certainly at fault. But the fate was sealed in an instant when the chief engineer gave the order, as you're going to hear right now in a second. Right there. Now. Put the engines into full reverse. When they went full astern on 3 screws, they sealed the fate of the Titanic. Its trajectory at that point was a matter of physics. With 3 screws, 3 propellers, that thing could have pivoted on a dime. It was a fascinating piece of technology that hadn't existed before that, at that scale. None of that is really important, though. I don't want you to remember any of that, so forget everything I just said. All I want you to remember is the look on the first officer's face here. Why isn't she turning? If you ever see that look in the eyes of leadership, get the hell off the damn boat. Not going to turn out well. I have never seen change of any significance occur in any organization, any industry, without the commitment of leadership. In many ways, all of you are those leaders. Right? Taking that vision of the future and making it actionable is a matter of a million small steps, but it's also a matter of one great grand vision. And the vision that we have needs to be a long one. It's one where technology truly does enable us to live our lives in a way that's more prosperous, more secure, and more certain. Who said this? Charles Duell, Commissioner of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, 1899. We don't believe it, and yet we behave it. So much of what you'll be doing in embracing these technologies and deploying them and understanding them comes down to also understanding these enormous shifts in behavior and how they are going to shape the future and how you are going to build that future with your leadership. Thank you so very much for having me here today. Such a pleasure to be with you. And take a drive in Boston. Rent a car. Drive in Boston. There's no greater thrill. Alicia.
So incredible.
Thank
wow.
you.
I am just blown
Thanks.
away by that presentation.
Appreciate it.
I actually have a question for you, and I think many of you may be wondering this in the room too. If so much of we've reached this infinite computing power, right?
The singularity.
What does that mean for our jobs? Are our jobs going to be safe, or is AI going to take over all of our jobs and there won't be anything left for us?
So look, near term, this was a quote from a Harvard colleague actually. Near term, your fear is not AI, your fear is that person who knows how to use AI. So my suggestion to you is learn how to use AI. Roll up your sleeves and become absolutely intimate with the damn thing, right? Understand it, use it daily, work with it. That's the biggest threat to your job over the course of the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. Beyond that, I think we're going to have to visit things like universal basic income, because a lot of entry-level positions, not necessarily in this room, but among the less creative, less knowledge work sort of crowd, those are going to be at huge risk, and we are going to have to look at universal basic income as a means by which to bridge that gap. The agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution happened over many decades, hundreds of years. This will happen over a decade. So we're in for a lot of change, a lot of turmoil, but also a lot of opportunity if you know how to use the tools and the technology and become a collaborator with your AI. That's the best I've got there.
That is so interesting. I'm just so glad you could be here with us today to impart that knowledge. I know AI is a big deal. It's coming, it's here, and you've just shed a lot of light onto what that means for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tom actually is going to be doing a book signing and a meet and greet actually over in our vendor showcase. Right after this, we're going to take a break. And I want to thank S3, Specialized Security Services, for hosting this exciting experience. All are welcome to attend. We do have some books to give away. We may run out, but we will offer you the QR code if you want to go ahead and purchase one of his books online. He's got several, but Gigatrends is the one today that you'll be signing. So go ahead. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in 30 minutes where we'll resume our program today, and I hope you all have a chance to meet Tom and ask some questions. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks
You're
very
awesome.
much.